I call to order the regular meeting of the Fullerton City Council for March 7th, 2023. And Madam Clerk, would you please explain to people how they may participate even remotely?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The public can access this meeting on fullerton.legistar.com on our government cable channels. Of course, they can always attend here in person, and they can address City Council here at the dais or by joining on Zoom. You can do that on your computer or on telephone. If you would like to address City Council here in chambers, please register to speak next door in the City Manager's office. And if you have materials to distribute to City Council, please provide copies to the staff next door, and they will get them to Council for you. Those of you who are joining via Zoom, please go to zoom.us/join or call 1-669-900-9128. The Zoom meeting ID is 978-4219-1797. And please raise your hand in Zoom when the mayor or mayor pro tem calls the item you would like to speak on for discussion. And I know I read those numbers quickly, but they are all on the agenda on our website.
Thank you for that, and would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Here.
Councilmember Charles.
Here.
Councilmember Dunlap. Councilmember Zara.
Here.
And I understand Mayor Jung will be here shortly.
And for our invocation this afternoon, we have Pastor Elliot Chung of One Life City Church to provide the invocation. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me here today. Actually, let us close our eyes and bow our heads, and as we do that, let's take a deep breath in and exhale. Heavenly Father, we enter into these chambers with gratitude and thanksgiving. We are thankful for every individual present here today that reflects the beauty and good of our beloved city and each other. We thank you for the opportunity to gather to seek the common good of our city and its people. Help us to remember your divine calling for all members of humanity, and especially for those who claim to follow the ways of Jesus, to love our neighbors and to be good stewards of your creation. Now we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in a meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a community and as neighbors. May it nurture the bonds of humanity and civility, so fill us with your grace, Lord God, as you make decisions and have conversations that might affect not just those here in this room, but even more importantly, people who aren't in this room and people who feel like they don't have a voice in this room. So may our conversations and decisions here be a reflection of the pursuit of a greater good and truth. May it sow love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Pastor Chung, would you please enlighten us a little bit on your church and its following?
Sure. We are a small, scrappy church. We're located at the end of Valencia. If you drive down here and right when it meets the trucks, that's where our church is at. Can I share two things that we're up to? Is that okay?
Certainly.
I don't want to take up
Yes.
too much of
Go
time,
ahead.
but first thing is we share our facility with a nonprofit here that has a lot of history with Fullerton called Solidarity. And this Saturday, they have an event called Taste of Maple, where some of the moms in the community will share food from their upbringing, and it's going to be a delicious and amazing event. So that's happening at the Solidarity Building this Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And if you're available, go check out Solidarity's website. And I believe tickets are still available. And it's going to be the best deal that day, I promise you, because it's $5 per ticket, and it's a full meal. It's not just sample size. It's a meal you're getting for $5. So it's going to be great. The second thing I'm excited about is as a clergy, as a member of, as a pastor, most of us are trained in theological things, but we often need help in the mental health side of things. And we realized in the last 3 years that there has been a greater need for mental health. And so one of the things that I'm excited to walk our staff in later this year is we get to do a training in mental health first aid. And it's the idea of just like how there's CPR training and first aid training for physical needs, there's a certification for mental health first aid so that folks like myself could stay within the realms of our expertise, and the folks who have expertise in mental health and like therapists and counselors could serve in that area. So I'm excited to do this with our staff later this year. So exciting stuff happening around both in our bodies physically and mentally in our spirits and souls as well. So thank you.
We'll always make time for sharing of good news.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
thank you very much, Pastor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Would Councilmember Zara, would you care to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I'll stand, please.
Hands over your hearts, please, and follow me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There was no closed session this evening, so no report from our city attorney as a result. I would ask at this time whether council members have any ex parte communications to report. Seeing none, we'll move on. And no presentations this evening, so it's time for public comments. You each have up to 3 minutes to talk about issues that don't appear on this agenda. And Madam Clerk, how many do you show registered?
We have 6 people registered to comment in chambers.
Okay.
And the first one is Todd Harrison, and following Mr. Harrison will be Bernard.
Great.
My name is Todd Harrison, and I'm one of the endangered residents of the Rancho La Paz Mobile Home Park. Hello again, Mr. Mayor, in absentia, council members, and the city staff of all departments. What I have to say right now is not about agenda item 8. I'll stand here again at the proper time to do so. Instead, I have a few words about what happened 2 weeks ago. I'm greatly disappointed in you, Mayor Young, and those that sit immediately each side of you. I try to keep sorted my personal feelings about each council person aside from the business of Fullerton's government. I was even developing some respect for you when you stepped up about the Rancho La Paz rat problem by invoking Bill Mudge with the Vector Control District. That has gone well, and he has been of great help to our residents. And then you threw away my grudging respect I have for you by shutting down Councilperson Charles on the legislative platform item. I watched that disgraceful performance piece and was outright shocked that you would so ignore her actual professional contribution to the needs of this city. I read in the current Fullerton Observer an article on page 5. Council member Dr. Shanna Charles deserves a public apology, and I fully agree. This diverse council is supposed to use the width of experience of individual members to bring to Fullerton, and yet you not only choose to shut down the actual true expert on the issue, you did so badly enough the city attorney later had to apologize for how it was done. I remind you that this is supposed to be a council of 5, not a junta of 3, and expect you to draw on all the members' strengths. I try to respect the rules of being polite in public, but this was so egregious, I have to tell you that I'm very disappointed you cast Dr. Charles in a non-consensual starring role in a banned Guinness commercial. I won't go into details here, but Google is about to see a bump in searches for that. The video is not completely safe for work, so wait till you're home. Full credit to my dear wife, Yolanda, who reminded me of the commercial. She stayed home this time to fight bronchitis, but has tested negative for COVID-19, or I could not be here. Apologize publicly to Dr. Charles and do better in remembering your obligations to we Fullerton residents. Thank you.
Next speaker is Bernard, and following Bernard will be Patty Tudor.
is Bernard, and I am a Fullerton resident. Komajang, you seem to think I don't like you. It's semantics. I don't respect liars. Not only do you lie on public record, you try to justify your lies and then throw a tantrum when your feelings are hurt, all while not taking accountability for your lies. It's remarkable. Maureen Milton, it's now March, yet Mr. Jung has yet to affix his front license plate. That's some kind of narcissism. The California state law even applies to you. The DMV doesn't send you 2 license plates so you have a backup just in case, but so that you can affix both the back and front plates to the vehicle so it's visible from 50 feet away. Your arrogance does the polar opposite of build trust with the residents. What happened to lead by example? If you're wondering about that, just look at our chiefs. They lead by example. I'm glad Chief Lozier can finally start moving forward in piecing back together our fire department after you spent taxpayer money on an OCFA study you knew you weren't supporting. The firefighters' raises is the bare minimum after your forced cuts, and it barely passed 3-2. You had to vote yes, because otherwise it would have been the collapse of our fire department, and you didn't want to have yet another failure to your re-election campaign. It's funny how this demonstrates that you have no influence on your own majority and had to end up voting with the 2 council members that actually care. You know, Council Member Zara, the fellow Deus member you spent 2 years attacking. For what? That's fine. You can act like a child and be salty with me. That doesn't change the fact that you acknowledged on public record you're breaking the law. You identify as a youth football coach and district rep, but
Thank you
have
for
no
your comments.
respect for rules or California state law. Go Bruins.
Next speaker is Patty Tudor, and after that will be Wooderick.
Hello, I'm Patty Tudor. I'm a Fullerton resident and planning commissioner, and I'm here to speak to you about 2 things today. One, I just want to thank Councilman Zara for bringing up at the last meeting that it would be nice to move the meetings later. I can make 5:30. I'm retired. It's not a problem for me, but I think for your constituents, you should make the meeting later. I really respect the work that the staff does, and I know that means they'll have to stay later, but we've got thousands of constituents here who will be able to make the meeting if you move it to a later time. Even if it's just 6, that will make it easier for people. The second one is a more serious conversation I want to have, and I want to thank you for what you said. I totally agree with what you said. So I won't repeat that, but I want to say that I am a constituent of Dr. Shana Charles, and I feel like not only did you knock the wind out of her sails, but me as well and all of her constituents by not listening to what she wanted to say. And I want to tell you a story about what happened in our last planning commission meeting, and contrast it to what happened here. In our last planning commission meeting, we talked a long time, longer than you did, so we were tired about an issue, and we finally were coming to a conclusion. But there was one member who disagreed, and we didn't stop him from talking. He disagreed, and we listened to him, and we talked over what he said, and he changed 2 of our minds. And I think now we came up with a better decision, and you should do the same. Thank you.
After that will be Eddie Carmona.
Thank you very much, members of the council. Before I start speaking, I don't know if each and every one of you has a copy, written FPC, a copy like this, please. Okay, thank you very much. Let me start this way. First Presbyterian Fullerton is on Euclid. That's my church for many, many years. That's my church. I use that address as my mailing address. I've had correspondence in this council here that it bore that address. Now, on Wednesday, I went to church. If you go to page 3, if you have that copy, go to page 3. You will see something there at the top written New Book Club, new meeting at FPC each week. Was Wednesday, was starting at 1. I went on Wednesday to my church to pick my mails. Then after that, I proceeded to the meeting. Then when I went, we differed with the pastor who is called Geoffrey Bridgman. Because about 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting in the church, and me, I'm very vocal about 2 things: corruption, nepotism, and racism. So this pastor, we differed on some areas. They say they are building, even during when the church was locked down during COVID, they just spend money. We explained with some people, what are you building? Where is the money going? The pastor does not like somebody who is outspoken. So I told him, where is the money going? In the meeting, in the financial report, they said that they are going to sell 2 property of the church. Then I asked, the last 3 years ago, you sold a property of the church. Where did you take money? And now why do you want to sell the property of the church? And I did writing a letter to the investment committee. Now, let me come to the core point. The police of Fullerton, let me start with this with heavy heart, is utterly racist to the core. The police in Fullerton is racist to the core. Police, about 6 to 8 police officers came. They said I trespass in my church and I stand on firm ground. I told them I've neither been excommunicated, neither expelled from my church. This is my church for many years. I participate even singing in the choir. I participate in various activities. You can't kick me out of the church of my church. If that's the case, where is the case? Where is the court order? Where is the warrant of arrest? The police did not hear that. The police get entangled in my church affairs where we have differences with the pastor. Sorry, thank you. It's over. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments.
And I was tortured, and I wanted to go to that end, but it's okay. The time is over.
Our next speaker is Eddie Carmona, and after that will be Maureen Milton.
Hello, City Council and members who are in attendance of the public. I want to thank the city staff first for all the work they do every day. It won't go unrecognized while I'm up here. I would also like to invite everybody up on the dais and everybody up in the audience to your our Meet the Assembly member event happening at the Fullerton Public Library this Saturday at 10. Come on down. Tell us what's important to you. We want to hear about it. I'll be there, and I hope you are there too. Thank you. I have flyers.
Next speaker is Maureen Milton, and our last one in chambers will be Curtis Gamble.
Good afternoon, Maureen.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I want to take this time, since I haven't been to the chambers for quite a while, to welcome our new, all of a sudden, our new council person, and I wish her all the best, and I hope she has some great ideas to carry us forth. And also, I have neglected to ask, since she now has so many titles, how does she like to be addressed? And the other thing is, when she's with her husband and taking pictures, please have her husband take his hat off so we can see who he is. And the other thing is, would you please have maintenance come and take some WD-40 and fix the door because it really makes a loud noise, especially when we're just having a small meeting as we did yesterday. And as I say again, I want to welcome Councilwoman Charles, and I hope she has a great stay at the dais. Thank you so much.
And our last speaker in chambers is Curtis Gamble, and after that, I do have one hand raised in Zoom.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Curtis Gamble, activist for the homeless, the veterans, the OCTA bus drivers, the low-income community. This evening, once again, I would like to share with you my thoughts on the Fullerton homeless, the veterans, the OCTA bus drivers, and the low-income community funding. Number one, the Cash App card is a free Visa debit card which allows community funding to pay for rent, electric bills, gas, and other goods and services. Number two, the City of Fullerton Municipal Code for Emergency Shelters should include tiny homes on all church property, which would be on a first-served, first-come basis. Number three, the housing element for 2021 through 2029 should also include a safe parking program and a rental parking space program with tiny homes. Number four, OC 2022 point-in-time count states that the Fullerton has over 200 homeless people living on the street. Many also live on the OCTA buses and OCTA bus shelters. Number five, Fullerton Navigation Center and Rapid Rehousing low-income funding should include Fullerton City Lights Apartment, Citril Apartments, Fullerton Heights Apartments, Ventana Senior Apartments, Hudson Ridge Apartments, and the Rancho La Paz Mobile Homes. Number six, on February the 1st, 2023, the county and PATH People Assisting the Homeless opened a cold weather shelter at Independence Park Gymnasium in Fullerton. Total cost to the county is $7,500 a month for rent, plus a $596,000 service contract. Number seven, we should allow the OCTA bus drivers to pick up and drop off the homeless at all the OC navigation centers and emergency shelters within a half mile of the OCTA bus stop. Number eight, Fullerton Observer, mid-November 2021, city receives $2 million grant for homeless services. Number nine, on February the 23rd, 2022, the city received $4 million in state funding for the purchase of the Fullerton Navigation Center. Number 10, on July the 6th, 2022, the city of Fullerton received over $5 million in state funding for the Hunt Branch Library, which could also serve as a safe RV parking program with ADUs and tiny homes, shelters, and rapid rehousing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Number 11, at the Fullerton City Council meeting in June the 7th, 2022, the city received $1,758,520 in SB2 funding. This funding should be used for hotels, motels, and rapid rehousing. Number 12, the city of Fullerton and the Hope Center has received more than $36 million in funding in 2022 on behalf of the homeless community. The Hope Center, number 13, the Hope Center and the OCTA bus drivers should partner and sublease one of the 4 Goodman Logistics Center warehouses located in the city of Fullerton Industrial by Right Overlay Zone for emergency shelters. It's time that we all start working together in order to better serve the Fullerton homeless community.
Thank you,
very much.
Mr. Gamble.
And we have one hand in Zoom. Diane Venna, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening. I have comments in 2 areas tonight. The first is regarding public comments. I would like to recommend that we go back to the previous procedure that we had. When you come in person, you entered the lobby, you could sign up to speak. It was all easy without having to go to another room. Also, when I was able to attend in person, many times when I wanted to speak, it was after I was listening to things that were being said during the meeting or commented on, and I would want to get up and speak. I shouldn't have to leave the room, no longer be able to hear what's going on in the meeting, and then come back. I don't think that's really fair. If the purpose is not to have a crowd lined up, it would be real easy just to say you only want 4 or 5 people lined up and maybe give a gentle reminder. And I think actually this way would be more efficient than what we're doing right now. And I also think that It's more welcoming, inviting, encouraging public participation, which is really the goal, to give everyone a voice. And I also want to say that all speakers deserve the same respect and to be listened to. And I don't always perceive that that's the case. So I just wanted to mention that. The second point is I'd like to speak about how you interact with each other on the dais. Again, it needs to be respectful. You need to listen to each other. What happened at the last meeting where Dr. Charles was forced by 3 of you to vote on an issue that she was not ready to vote on through no fault of her own. She just asked reasonably that it be postponed, which it has now, or that, and when that didn't pass, that at least she could discuss and ask questions. That was shut down. So a vote was forced. All of you are equal, and I want to thank Councilman Zara because he listened, and even though he was probably ready to vote, he listened to her, and what she requested was reasonable, and so he, was supporting her. What you did, not only was it disrespectful, it just wasn't right. All of you are equal. All of you are voted in. You represent your districts, and you're trying to make the best decisions you can for the city. And so I just ask that in the future, even though you can do this kind of thing, it isn't right. And honestly, it's not pleasant to watch. And all of us were watching. I would also ask that you be mindful of when the agendas come out. I think it was unintentional.
And that's your
last
3
time.
minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. No more? All right, we will bring the discussion back to first staff communications. I'll ask our city manager whether there are any staff communications.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members, I just want to have a couple quick announcements. One is this will be the last week for Meg McQuaid, who's our Public Works Director. She's leaving at the end of the week. And so I just want to congratulate her and thank her for all of her service she's done over the last 4 years for the city of Fullerton, and I appreciate that. Second, another personnel announcement, I want to let you know that Sanina Thomas has been named the Community Development Director. And I want to congratulate her and thank her for joining us here in Fullerton. She's been trying to do a lot to make some changes in community development, and is continuing to try to make it more efficient operation up there and working with the staff. And then the third thing is we're still working with Caltrans on homeless encampments, and I think we have some agreements that we're starting to work on, and we'll be updating you hopefully in the next month on some things that we're making positive movement with Caltrans on. So I wanted to let you know that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And council comments, Councilmember Charles.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And first, I'd like to say I do appreciate the supportive comments. I'll save my substantive comments on the item, of course, for when we get it to the agenda. But for those of you that made public comment, I do appreciate that. Thank you. And but moving on now to other issues, and moving on in this very productive meeting, I'm sure. I want to first report to you folks and to whoever's watching on Zoom what I've been up to, because it's been very busy these last 2 weeks. We've had community meetings on the Hunt Library. We had a community meeting on the tracks development that we had voted on. Both of those I attended. I also went to the East Fullerton Little League opening day, in which they were very grateful to city staff, and I would like to point out the wonderful work of city staff for being able to, in the few months that I've been on the dais, working with me and working with them to be able to give them what they need and the permits, the city support that they needed to be able to refurbish their own dugouts. They're entirely paying for it through volunteer donations and through their board, and it's really just wonderful to see. There were literally hundreds of parents and kids there, and some of our own Titan baseball players too, which was also very heartwarming that they were out there to support the kids. And they were all so grateful that those dugouts are in the middle of being fixed. They would have been done by opening day, except that we have had the literally most rainy season in decades, including snow, which I was fortunate enough that happened when I was here at City Hall in the parking lot, I saw snow in downtown Fullerton. If some of you missed that, it was a very strange day. So it's been a very busy 2 weeks on those things, along with the extra meetings that city staff did give me so that I could explore the legislative platform. We added extra meetings along with our normal agendized meeting, and I really do appreciate all the work that city staff has done. And one other meeting I should mention also is I did go also to the community engagement police meeting as well, and learned about that board and what they're doing. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. So on a kind of a broader level, I would like to thank, although I believe he's left, but thank the pastor for doing that wonderful invocation. But today is also Purim. The sun is setting, so Purim is ending. That is a Jewish holiday. I'm the first Jewish council member in Fullerton, as far as we can tell. If anybody knows differently, I'd love to hear it. But as far as the local historians have been able to tell me, I'm the first Jewish person on the dais. And so I'd like to say, happy Purim to those who are celebrating. Along with tomorrow is Holi, which is an entirely different holiday for an entirely different religion. And I do appreciate these invocations. You will find that I don't bow my head, because that's actually what Purim is all about. If you want to look into that, that's a Jewish thing. But the thing I'd like to point out about that is it would be great if we could rotate some of these invocations. We have 24 of them a year, right, 2 a month, and it would be wonderful if we could include some of the other major religions. Fullerton's a very diverse, multicultural city, especially in our downtown. If you ever just walk around, you will see multitudes of faiths represented, and I think it would be wonderful if we could rotate some of those invocations to include other religions besides Christianity and Catholicism. And also, I would like to acknowledge that it is Women's History Month as well in the month of March. And there was a wonderful article in the Fullerton Observer about the history of women sitting on this dais. And it turns out I am the 10th woman to sit on this dais. So, and we'll see where that line goes to in the future. But I encourage all of you to look at our local journalistic gem, the Fullerton Observer, and look up that article so you can learn about the history of women's on the city council. Oh, and Todd, I hope your wife feels better soon. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Sure. So after a couple weekends of rainouts, there was finally a glorious baseball weekend. I guess at the collegiate level, that started with a pretty exciting series of the Titans taking 2 of 3 from Texas. I guess for us, old-time Fullertonians, we remember the Augie Garrido days at Fullerton. Of course, he later went on to Texas and became, I believe, the second winningest coach, college baseball coach of all time. But it was great to see the Titans take 2 of 3 and signify horns down to Texas. But I think most importantly, was able to participate in the opening night events at Fullerton hosts softball. They've got over 495 girls that are playing this season, and it was really great to get out there and see the festivities, because there was a little bit more than just softball taking place. They had a real fun family event that night on Friday night. And then Saturday was able to take part in a really just wonderful event up at Unocal Field, which is Golden Hill Little League's opening day. And, they're very excited. They have their biggest field of players ever. Over 665 kids are going to be playing Little League this year at Golden Hill. And Golden Hill has always been one of the biggest Little Leagues in all of California. But, to see enrollment continue to rise in an age where people are now, where these nonprofit, volunteer-driven leagues are now competing with, travel baseball leagues that are for-profit, it's just really remarkable, and I think a true testament to the quality of volunteers across the community that are contributing into these youth leagues. It's very important, and I'm really very grateful for this for the community effort there. So, of course, wish all the little leagues in Fullerton well, and with that, that's my report for this evening.
All right, Councilman Zorro, have you given your report, sir?
Not yet, but thank you very much. And happy Women's History Month and happy Purim. I want to start by congratulating our new Director of Community Economic Development, Sunaina Thomas. So looking forward to many years of your work here. And also I want to give a really big shout out to Director McQuaid. She has been really tremendous in her work. She's one of the few women in public works at that level and has a lot of experience. So sad to have her leave, to see her leave. We worked closely in the early days when we were tackling PFAS especially, and we were able to bring in the first PFAS treatment plant in the county here to Fullerton, thanks to a lot of her efforts as well. So we're going to miss her and wish her all the best. I do want to also say it was Little League weekend, so I want to give a plug to the West Little League, Fullerton Little League. They may not be the biggest, but they are certainly mighty. And we had a great event opening day, thanks to also the Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva's being there and announcing that the naming of a portion of the 5 freeway after legendary Tommy Lasorda. And I want to give a shout out to Eddie Carmona there, who was instrumental in organizing this event and even bringing the Dodgers, one of the Dodgers players, to the event as well, and making it really memorable for all the little players there that got to see something that maybe inspired them for their future as well. So it was a wonderful, wonderful event. I also want to thank Deputy Chief Meacham and Captain Dan Lancaster for coming out to the meeting, community meeting at the Ventana with some of the residents there who had some concerns about fire safety at the Ventana. For those folks who don't know, it's a senior residence complex here in Fulton, right across Station 1 off of Commonwealth. And we had a really great conversations, and we've learned quite a bit. In fact, I would like to ask if one of the things that the takeaways is that a lot of folks out there don't really have the knowledge or some of the basic information on what to do if there is an emergency, if there's a fire emergency, if there's an earthquake, what are some of the basic things that one can do to protect themselves and their buildings and their communities. Hopefully, I do also want to give a shout out to Chief Adam Lozier, who helped me organize this meeting too as well. But maybe we can put together some documentation and some pamphlets or information that we can give, especially to some of the senior residences out there, and then create something that we can provide to all the apartment complexes throughout the city. And we have our Ventana residents here as well who can give some more feedback as well. So it's really great. If you have any neighborhood meetings or neighborhood groups that would like to have any one of us come out and speak and listen to you and some of the concerns or ideas that you may have, you're always feel free to reach out. Some of us are on social media. I certainly am. You can always follow us and tag us or ask us questions. We're always very responsive. As far as some of the concerns about the timing and the meetings, I've always been a fan of a later meeting because it allows for people to come from work and have the time to maybe get a quick bite and then come and attend here. So I noticed, I was looking at the forecast on the agenda that I think these items are coming at the next council meeting. So pay attention to that. If you want to participate and give your opinion on that, it will come at the next meeting. Let's see. Got a list of things here. I'm organizing. I know fentanyl has been a big issue in our community, and I'm happy to organize a meeting on March 23rd. It's a town hall meeting at the Fulton Library here, community center for everybody. I'll have more details on this on my social media and also at the next council meeting. I'll announce it with maybe some flyers, but for now, mark your calendars, March 23rd, 6 p.m. It'll be a fentanyl awareness event and some updates on what the state and what our local police department is doing to counter this deadly drug. Lastly, I'd like to give just a quick report on our museum. We're happy to welcome the museum. As some of you may know, I serve representing our city on our Fullerton Museum Board. And we have new board members. The board has expanded, and we're looking forward to working with new members from new areas and new neighborhoods that are coming in with fresh ideas. We have new exhibits in the works as well. There's one that celebrates women and women artists, so that's something to look out for. The museum still is struggling with some issues. I think one of them is a very lengthy contract negotiation with the city itself. As you know, the city has not been able to fund the museum, and so they are securing funding separately. And there's new negotiations happening, but it has been a while, and I really hope that we can expedite this as much as possible and look at and really try to negotiate in good faith some of the issues that are coming up. One of the big issues, and I think more immediate ones, and I hope we can bring this back, is the fact that the current contract with the Museum Association does not allow them to hire people directly, which is an issue because the original contract stipulates that the city provides the staffing. Well, the city has not been providing the staffing, and therefore they are left a little bit in limbo. I hope that maybe, I know we brought this item, but then it got pushed back, but was never brought back again. So I really hope we can maybe bring at least to do just an amendment for this, if possible, so that we can, so the Museum Association can actually hire people and move forward, because I think it would be beneficial for all of us as in expediting the process. That is all I have, and so maybe I also want to pull items 2 and 3 from the consent calendar. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a cold and cloudy and mostly rainy time here in Orange County since about November this year. But I attended an event on Friday where appropriately the sun came out and shone quite brightly. It was during an event that was held in remembrance of Shirley Owens McClanahan, the youngest of 13 children of the Owens family, which was one of the first African-American families in Orange County. And it was very well attended. It was at the Friends Church in Yorba Linda off Bassenchery. And all those, both families and all those who worked with Shirley and knew and loved her, it was a very sad but also uplifting event in terms of remembering those who have been significant in our area. And I heard just recently, too, and I'd like to ask the mayor to at least pause for a moment of silence at the close of this meeting. Former mayor, council member F. Richard Jones, Dr. Dick Jones, who passed away recently. Dr. Jones was originally from Texas. He was an Air Force officer. He served as mayor, I believe, twice in his time on the council. He's a former president of the Chamber of Commerce. And I did serve in 2010, 11, and 12 with Dr. Jones as well. He's a plastic surgeon and, as I said, a former Air Force officer. So plans are being made for his interment in Riverside at the National Cemetery in Riverside within the next couple weeks. But if you would do that, Mr. Mayor, it would be appreciated.
Of course, sir. All right, with nothing further, no appointments this evening.
Oh,
we'll move to-
Mr. Mayor, would I be able to address the museum comment real quick, or
Please.
question on the museum lease or MOU discussion? I just want to let the council know that I've personally been engaged in that and have asked for a couple meetings, and we've sent drafts. We're still waiting for comments from the museum on our latest draft on the MOU. So I've been pushing it. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to come to agreement with them even on the simple MOU. So I just want to make sure the council's aware of that.
If I may, when was the last correspondence that you sent?
It's probably been within. So whenever the event, it was the same week as the event that just occurred there.
Okay, so recently.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do you think there's any chance to be able to bring back the item for just a quick amendment on the clause about the hiring, because that is one of the big issues they're having. As an organization, it cannot really function properly. If we want it to function properly and set it up for success, then this is something that I think is essential to do.
I can send something out to the council to give a status on that so that we don't get into a Brown Act issue with a discussion on that item. But I can send out a memo. I just want to let the council know that I have been actively trying to get to that MOU.
Because this item was, I remember agendizing it, was it last year?
I agree.
And it came and then got pushed away, delayed, and then never came back.
Right.
So does it require, if I wanted to agendize it again for another discussion, Mr. Attorney, do I have to re-agendize it?
It would appear to be so, yes.
Yeah, if I may have a second to re-agendize that.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
All right, nothing further. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Councilman Zara has pulled 2 and 3. We'll take that at the end of the meeting.
I'd move the balance.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Charles?
Aye.
Councilmember Dunlap?
Aye.
Councilmember Zara?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker?
Aye.
And Mayor Jung?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Very well. Move on to the first item on our agenda this evening of regular business. It is the Southern California Association of Governments General Assembly Delegate. We'll ask the city clerk. Madam
Very
City Clerk.
briefly, for those of you who've been on council for a year or two, this is a standard item. We request council appoint a delegate. And if you have someone else going, also an alternate delegate to represent the city at the I'm trying to remember what SCAG stands for, Southern California Association of Governments Conference in, I believe it's Palm Desert in May.
All right, thank you. Is there any comments from council members? Otherwise, we'll take public comments on this. Seeing none, then we'll go to public comment.
I'm sorry. I have a question.
Council member, please.
So I would just like to ask a clarification question, just because since we have a city manager who's been here for less than a year and wasn't quite sure of this, and I wasn't able to get a clear answer on this, what have we historically done in terms of who we've sent to this conference? What has been in the past? And I asked maybe Mr. Whitaker, who has the most historical memory on this, or anyone who
I attended last year, and Councilmember Jesus Silva was the alternate.
Usually it's by council discussion and decision, and typically if the mayor elects to go, he's given first opportunity.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Very well. We'll take public comments on this issue, Madam City Clerk.
I have no comments on this item.
Very well. Are there any in Zoom?
None on Zoom.
All right, we'll bring it back for consideration. Are there nominations from council?
If I may, if Councilwoman Charles would be interested, I would happy nominate her.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
I would nominate you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll do this like we do any other nomination. We'll just have the city attorney or Madam City Clerk, we'll just call individual.
And you can announce your preference for nominee when I call your name.
Very well.
If I may just have a brief discussion on this item.
What would you like to discuss, sir?
Well, these representations are essential, and if we are to have good governance and good representation at these regional boards, I really encourage this council to diversify these appointments. You don't have to appoint, we don't have to appoint the same 1 or 2 people from this board, from this council to every single board.
That would be the assumption then that the 1 person or 2 persons are representing the city in a negative manner or not doing their
Well, that could be open to debate, sir.
We could debate that.
Yeah.
I don't see you on any committee, and I think that you've lost faith of the council here. I mean, at least for me. Right?
Well,
so if you want to talk about your representation, we could talk about your representation on water, on the Orange County Water District. You talk about all of these grandiose things. You want to take credit for PFAS and having the treatment plant, yet the only thing that you managed to accomplish there was run for chair and lose, as far as I know.
That
we
is
could talk
actually
about-
Mr. Mayor,
if I may, I don't want to get this into. You're making this very personal, Mr. Mayor, and this is not what I am talking about. But for the record, I did not run for chair of Orange County Water District, so your information is inaccurate, and I encourage you to go look at the public records on that. However, this is about governance, and it's about making sure that we diversify the voices in these regional boards. You, Mr. Mayor, sit on how many? I don't know. We've lost track because I think most of them are yours. And while I'm very sure you're doing a great job, but I think it would be great to have someone else also represent us. And I would really love for Councilman Charles to have. I keep saying Councilman. Apologize, Council Member Charles, to have the ability to experience some of these regional boards and to bring her perspective. This is SCAG, but folks who don't know deal a lot with policy and regional policy, and I think with her experience in public policy, I think she'll bring a really great voice for our city there. I'm not advocating for myself. I'm just saying, if you don't want to appoint me to anything, I get it. Fine, you don't like me.
If
We
it's
get
the
that,
will of the
but-
council, we will go to that. Again, I don't know what is like or dislike, and this is a popularity contest, sir. I mean, you may make it out to be to members of the community, kind of get, tug on their heartstrings or whatever you wish to do, and make it a thing like that, that's fine. But the will of the council, I'm happy to, if they want to send Councilmember Charles, they are welcome to do that.
Well, sir, I think people are watching these meetings, so I don't need to tug on anybody's hearts because they're all watching and they see exactly what's happening. So, but again, this is about having a representative that has the ability to discuss and negotiate on public policy matters that are very essential to the city. This is not about just a trip to Palm Springs. Or to have a title or this and that. But I think
I don't know
we
that
are
anybody
doing-
on council considers a trip to Palm Springs or having a title. It's a sacrifice that everyone here makes, including you when you served on the Orange County Water District. It's a mere small stipend, or some not at all. So this notion that you're thinking that somebody would do this for a vacation, is that what your assumption is when you say that? Because you
That is not
seem
what I'm saying.
fairly naive in that
is-
discussion, sir.
That is not what I'm saying, and I really don't appreciate the tone or where how you make this very personal against me. I don't understand why this is the discussion right now. I'm asking if we can give an opportunity.
We have order, please.
If we can have an opportunity for Councilmember Charles to serve on something of significance, because she can bring a good voice to this. That is all I'm asking.
We'll see if that's the will of the council, but if that was all that you were asking, I'm going to give you a recommendation, sir. Next time, just ask that, rather than make the commentary.
That's actually all I asked.
All right. Any other discussion? Yes, council member.
So I would like to thank Councilman Zara for nominating me for this. I do appreciate it, and people are free to look at my bio, but I will say my first association with SCAG was about 20 years ago. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, it's older because it's 2023. So 22 years ago now, when I did my master's thesis, because I have a concentration in regional development, and so I worked with them in thinking about issues related to biotechnology, and that's a whole nother thing. But so I am very familiar with this organization. I do appreciate that council has actually been very considerate of my time in terms of being a professor and having classes. I did check to make sure that this could fit in my schedule. I will be doing meetings on the road, but I would be happy to do that if the council chooses to send me as their representative, and I hope I get that opportunity this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one.
Sure, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Of course.
I'm in my 13th year on the council now, and last year was the first time I attended SCAG, at least as a member of the council. I had previously working at county government and at state government. I had attended SCAG events, but only once in my 13 years. So it's not as though anyone can lay claim to something like this. It's each year the availability and who might be the best designee. That's really the important factor.
All right, Madam City Clerk, please.
Okay, and again, please state the name of your preference for the delegate to the conference. We'll start with Councilmember Charles.
Charles, please.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Jung.
Councilmember Zara.
Charles.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Jung.
And Mayor Jung.
Jung.
That passes 3-2. And you also have an opportunity to appoint an alternate delegate if you would so choose.
Councilmember Charles it is.
Okay. Would you like to take a voice vote on Councilmember Charles as the alternate if there are no other nominations?
I think we could just take it as a affirmation and move on.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify the alternate position is a non-voting position.
You clarified that. All right, next item is the Maple Neighborhood Center lease. We have our Deputy City Manager, Miss Daisy Perez, is going to present this. Madam Deputy City Manager, good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Can you hear me? Okay. I have a brief update for you this evening on this item. So at the January 17th meeting, City Council authorized staff to negotiate a lease agreement with the YMCA to operate the Maple Neighborhood Center and provide neighborhood services in an after-hours private rental program. Since then, staff work with the City Attorney's Office to draft a lease agreement with the YMCA to manage and operate the Maple Neighborhood Center and provide neighborhood services. The lease presented this evening guarantees space at the Maple Neighborhood Center to the local boxing club twice a week for 2 hours as requested by the City Council. It also includes City Council approved policies and fees for private rentals at the Maple Center, ensuring that the YMCA will manage private rentals in the same way that the city managed the rentals. The lease has a proposed initial 5-year term beginning April 1st and ending March 31st, 2027. And the proposed terms of the agreement require the city and the YMCA to meet annually to evaluate the YMCA's programs and ensure compliance with the terms of the agreement. In addition, Parks and Rec staff will meet with the YMCA prior to the beginning of summer and again prior to the beginning of the school year to discuss and evaluate their programming schedules, community relations, and other items. If approved, the YMCA would take over the building maintenance and custodial for the Maple Neighborhood Center as part of the proposed lease. The city would remain responsible for capital replacement items or major repairs, and this is consistent with our lease agreements of other neighborhood centers in the city. That concludes my update tonight, and I'm available for questions.
Very well. Let's see if there's any questions from our council. Council members have any questions of our Deputy City Manager?
Yeah, I have a quick question, if I may.
You,
please. What is the, if we can just give a reminder for the community is on the savings. What are the savings that the city will have by giving the YMCA these services? There. Do you remember?
1 second. So the annual savings for the building maintenance portion of that are $52,000. And in addition, if we were to have staffed the building ourselves, we would incur additional costs for the staffing of that center.
Okay, so we're looking at anywhere between $50,000 to $80,000 or more in savings, right? Okay.
Probably with staffing, I want to say closer to $150,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So just to give folks who may not have paid attention to the progression of this, just to give context, we as a city are not able to maintain the building necessarily or staff it for services. So the YMCA has been granted that opportunity to run the services there. But the big discussion was about allowing the public to still have access to it for rentals if anybody wants to do an event there. because of the low cost of those of the rentals there, and the YMCA is able to accommodate that, and that is in the agreement.
Correct.
Okay. And this will give us an annual savings. One of the things I wanted to ask is that I know that they, a lot of their services are low income, low cost for low income residents, and but then they don't. They offer also scholarships for some of those to provide free service, free educational and recreational services. Correct?
That's correct.
With the current savings that we're making, what I'd like to propose is if we can create maybe a fund of maybe $20,000 to sort of help increase that subsidy that they provide, so that we can reach more low-income residents and provide more free programming, or allow the free programming to expand to more residents, because we'll still be within that savings period. I don't know if this is something that we can do separately. I'm assuming this wouldn't be part of this lease, obviously, but I'd like to see if we can maybe discuss that and have that be part of the brought back maybe as another item to look into.
Yeah, we'd certainly be open to look into that. Another item I would bring up is they're currently receiving CDBG funding from the city to operate programs. So maybe that's something that we look at expanding their allocation award if they were to resubmit for CDBG funding, or providing a different allocation either now or maybe at time of our budget adoption.
Yeah, I'd love to see that happen, because I think with the savings, this allows us to give at least some of this saving back into the community through additional expanding their subsidy program, so that more people can, and more kids and more adults can be able to participate in those, especially in the Maple and Richmond neighborhoods. These are some of the lowest income neighborhoods, and it would be great to be able to expand these services there. I don't know if that requires any a second to bring this item back, or maybe we can have it as a discussion with.
Well, if there's an intent to give direction, it would have to come back as a council item.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see that come back if any of the.
It needs a second, is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
So, sure, I'll second that to put it on a future agenda.
All right, thank you. But I've looked at the lease, and it's everything that we've discussed have been included in there. This is actually one of the better leases I've seen written on some of these things. So thank you for that.
Thank you and the rest of the council for your feedback on getting to this point.
Any other council comments or questions that you'd like to ask of the deputy city manager? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to public comments on this issue.
I have no one registered in person or on Zoom.
Very well. We'll bring it back to council. Seek a motion for approval or otherwise.
I move to approve the lease.
Second.
All right, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Charles.
Aye.
Councilmember Dunlap. Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Next item on the agenda is merchant and gateway provider agreements and credit card fee structure. This was brought back from the last meeting, and I'm going to have Director Ellis Chang make a very, very short presentation.
I will do my best.
A synopsis of all of this, and then we'll go to the council member that brought it back and
Thank you.
see if there's additional questions or that need to be answered.
So good
Director
evening.
Chang, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This evening, staff seek approval to sign agreements with Tyler Technologies and with Global Payments Integrated to provide merchant and gateway services, and also to seek direction as to the city's credit card fee structure. The fee structure portion of tonight's agenda was continued from the February 21st City Council meeting. Next slide, please. Okay. Thanks. With the city's implementation of Tyler Cashiering, there are only 2 merchant and gateway service providers that are compatible with Tyler Cashiering, Tyler Pay and Global Payments Integrated. Amendment number 2 to the Tyler Technologies Agreement engages Tyler Technologies to also provide merchant and gateway services for the merchant accounts for which Tyler provides real-time integration. Approval of the agreement with Global Payments Integrated will enable integration with the Parks and Recreation, the compressed natural gas, and the downtown parking software applications for credit card payment processing. It's important to note that staff are still working with Global Payments Integrated as to whether or not those credit card and e-check fees for those merchant accounts can be passed to customers. Next slide. Customers may currently remit payment for city services via cash, check, credit card, and by late 2023, also via e-check. While the city does not incur an additional cost for payments via cash, check, ACH, wire transfers, the city does incur fees for when customers pay with a credit card. The city currently does not accept payments via PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, or other similar person-to-person payment platforms. So currently, the city fully absorbs credit card fees, and those credit card fees have not historically been included when departments update their fees and charges. Next slide. The city currently pays approximately $400,000 in credit card fees. About 80% of those fees is the component charged by the credit card companies, with the balance paid to the merchant and gateway services providers. It's important to note the credit card company fees that are assessed directly by credit card companies are not negotiable by the city. Next slide. So this slide presents the credit card transaction volume by utility, Parks and Recreation, downtown parking, as well as all the other non-utility accounts. The non-utility row includes public works engineering, community and economic development, building and planning, as well as fire, police, general billing, business registration, and library credit card transaction volume. And next slide. And with that, I would like to review the recommended action items slightly out of order. It's recommended that City Council approve and authorize City Manager or designee to execute and administer agreements and/or agreements related documents with Tyler Technologies Incorporated and with Global Payments Integrated, including renewals and/or extensions and future amendments in a form approved by City Attorney, and authorizing the city manager or designee to terminate agreements with the current merchant services and gateway providers. And next slide. It is recommended, per city council input, the recommended option is to, number 1 recommended option includes passing on the credit card fees to all customers. The city does not incur fees for cash, check, ACH, or wire transfer payments initiated by customers, so no fees would be assessed to customers for those payment types. The city absorbs e-check fees for utility as well as non-public works and non-community and economic development customers. And the e-check fee right now is estimated to be about a flat $1.25 per transaction. City to absorb e-check fees for Parks and Recreation and/or parking kiosk and mobile application customers. And then the city would pass on e-check fees to Public Works as well as CED customers. An alternate recommendation would be for City Council to consider potentially phasing in the recommended option over a 2-year period. And a second alternate would be that the City Council could decide to absorb the credit card fees for Parks and Recreation as well as the parking kiosk and mobile application customers. And with that, staff are available for any questions.
All right, any questions from council members? Councilmember Charles, please.
So on the agenda, it lists an option B blended structure that doesn't appear to be in this recommendation slide, so I just want to clarify this. So the option B blended structure says absorbing utility credit card and e-check fees, so basically making it so that anytime you pay for utility, that fee by whatever method is absorbed by the city, and then it's non-utility credit card and e-check fees that are passed on to customers. And so it doesn't seem to be in your slide here that that's part of one of the recommended alternatives. Is that one of the things that we can vote on here?
So Mayor John, Councilmember Charles, and City Council, you can change the recommendation however you want. The reason I tried to just bring the recommendation through the supplemental today is because the way it was structured in the council communication was somewhat confusing and could be read a variety of different ways. And so what I tried to just narrow it to is what I heard from the council on the last council meeting, but you can definitely change it to that. We gave that blended A, blended B, but I think that created more confusion than it did understanding of what was being recommended. So that's why I came with just a uniform recommendation, trying to be consistent with where the council was at.
Yeah, and in my folder, so this is what was published on the agenda, that recommendation slide actually includes option A and option B.
That's
so
correct.
It's different than what was shown finally.
There-
So then why was that? I mean, my recollection is that option B is more consistent with what we discussed. So was it a fiscal decision that the staff is recommending option A? What is the reason why option B got kind of pushed to
Option B
not being
has,
recommended?
option B has the city continuing to fully absorb credit card as well as e-check fees and passing on all the other types of credit card and e-check fees to customers.
The option B is absorbing the fees for utilities specifically.
Yeah. So we heard a variety of messages. So that's why we put the recommendation and then gave the alternative that you could actually phase it in over a couple of years. Or you could go to the B, as you said, but we heard a variety of different messages at the council meeting, so we were trying to consolidate that.
Okay, so could we have some information about the difference between the two options in terms of impact?
Sure. As outlined on the February 21st agenda item for option A, which is in the agenda packet, option A would be a savings of about $340,000 to the city. For option B, with the city fully absorbing the utility credit card as well as e-check fees and passing on all the other fees, there would be savings of about $140,000 to the city.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. And to put that in a different way, in a different perspective, what we're expecting then is that residents would be paying $200,000 more under option A than they would under option B.
Yes.
And I just want to bring up again in the comment, well, we're not at discussion yet, so I'll bring up my perspective on that difference in the discussion.
Any other questions, council member? Anything further?
I don't have any clarifications for staff
Very well.
at this point.
Any other council members? All right, we'll go to public comments on this.
No public comments in chambers or in Zoom.
Very well. We'll ask the council members that wanted this brought forward or continued anyhow to clarify it and ask questions of staff, or we'll seek a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Council member.
Yeah, I asked that this be brought back. I just don't think that the city should be subsidizing these expenses. You know, there's fees that are incurred as a result of payments, and they should be allocated back to the residents that are choosing to pay via those vehicles. You know, the reality is, you know, there is a no-cost electronic option via ACH. And there are other methods for people to pay without, you know, without these fees being added. People want the convenience fees, then, you know, credit card and things like that, then they can also pay those fees. And I think that should apply across the board. I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. To the tune of $200,000 or $400,000, I don't believe the city should be subsidizing, you know, ratepayers from that standpoint. I think it's a relatively minimal expense. I think amortized across the ratepayers that might be choosing to pay via those mechanisms, and you know, as a result of that, I think they could pay that cost. Additionally, you know, there was I think a reference made to, you know, the development related costs that would be billed back, and the city absorbing like $1.50 cost. I mean, those are mostly business expenses anyways. And I mean, $1.50, I think, for, you know, the average, you know, business owner, developer who's coming in to propose a project, you know, that's not going to significantly impact their costs. So, you know, I support, and I don't know, it doesn't look like that option is outlined here. But that's kind of where I'm at, and those are my thoughts. You know, you hit what I asked for in terms of the you know, the no cost electronic option, which is ACH, and of course, you know, check that also doesn't have the you know, there's obviously no fee for that as well. So then, as long as the other fees, whether it's utility or non-utility, are billed back to the, you know, applicant or the ratepayer, I'm supportive of that option.
So you're supportive of option A, sir, as far as I can tell, yeah? Okay.
I believe the recommended
So you wanted the
option.
hybrid then, or you wanted a separate?
Right, exactly.
Right, okay. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad that you clarified that.
I believe the recommended option that was on the slide actually houses everything that Councilmember Dunlap had just conveyed. So it does have the Public Works Engineering as well as the Community Economic Development permit fees, those fully being passed on to the customers, both the e-check as well as the credit card.
The recommendation tab.
Yeah.
Can we pull that slide back up, actually?
It's
That'd be
slide
helpful.
number 8. It's the last small bullet under number 1. Has both the credit card as well as the e-check fees. Thank you, Jermaine. So the first bullet point under recommended option includes all credit card fees being passed to customers. And then the last bullet under recommended option 1 includes the city passing on e-check fees as well to the Public Works and CED kind of development-related permit customers.
Well, it says city absorbs e-check fees, right? So that's the city paying.
The city would absorb the e-check fees for utilities as well as for non-public works and non-community economic development. But if you look at that last bullet under recommended option number 1, city would pass on the e-check fees for the public works and the community economic development.
Okay, I guess I'm a little confused as to why we'd say one thing and then immediately say the opposite in the same.
The reason is that Public Works, everything on the second floor, Public Works and Community Economic Development, we're not able to separate the credit card as well as the e-check fees, so it's either all passed or all absorbed. So if you look at, I understand why there's confusion. So the third bullet says the city would absorb e-check fees for utilities as well as for everything else except for Public Works and except for Community Economic Development. And then the last bullet has the city passing on the e-check fees for those 2 areas.
But
Sorry, go
But
ahead.
credit card fees would be passed on to everybody.
Credit card fees would be passed to everybody.
Well, right, but as should the e-check fees. I mean, that's, so I guess if we can just strike the bullet 3 and then move forward with item 1, that's what I would be supportive of.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you. So you essentially want credit card fees as well as e-check fees passed to every customer, regardless of the area.
Right, exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Mr. Mayor?
Please, Councilmember Charles.
Actually, if you could come up back, I'm sorry. So this actually brings up some clarification questions that I want to make sure that we get established here. So we're throwing around terms like e-check, ACH, and just assuming that the public knows what that means. So if we could just go into that a little bit more about what the differences are between those 2 payments, and also do those require having a checking account through a bank and a checking account number, which, as I mentioned before, there are not just residents who are low income, but also younger residents who may not have that.
So everything that it requires, I think the simplest way to put it, at least in my mind, is that anything that is pushed out by the customer, cash payment, check payment, electronic bank check, meaning you log into your own bank account and you push out a payment, you initiate an ACH or you initiate a wire, the city doesn't incur fees to take payments pushed out by the customer. The alternative is if the city is taking a credit card or reaching into somebody's bank account to pull out money, that's what's considered an e-check. So if you, as an example, you have a cell phone provider and you log into your account and you say you want them to do an automatic withdrawal from your account every month to pay your bill, that's considered an e-check. And for that, the payment gateway, merchant and gateway provider charges that flat fee. It's $125 or somewhere around that range, depending on the provider.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And I also want to highlight something that Councilman Zara said in our last meeting, that people who are lower income, who are paying by credit card, are often doing so not by choice, but because the bank account doesn't have enough to cover a utility, and so would be penalized for having to use that method of payment if we passed along fees to them, and they are the ones who are least able to afford those fees.
If I may.
Councilmember Zara.
Yeah, so that was my concern on the utilities, because what I'm hearing is now that we're basically passing on all fees on every transaction, regardless of what it is. And while I think ultimately this could be the way to go, I think just for being cautious a little bit on this, I would carve out just the utility portion of this, because again, there may be people who are on fixed incomes, and I'm worried about seniors and low income residents who may not have the ability to pay on time every month, and sometimes credit cards are used to sort of manage the cash flow until they get the next paycheck. But now we're giving them another $30 in addition to the actual water payment, for example, that they're going to be incurring. So I just would like to carve out the utility portion of this, at least for a year, to see how this all works out, and then I'd be happy to revisit it a year from now. But maybe during this year we start letting people know that this is happening. It takes a while for all of these things to kind of get through into the community, and for everybody to be comfortable and aware of all of these things. So that's my only thing, is that maybe we just don't rush into the utility part of it.
So I would just add, Councilman, the reality is if somebody's using a credit card to make a payment, they could just as easily go to Ralph's or the post office or another grocery store and get a cashier's check or money order to pay without having to pay that processing fee, which would actually be better all around. And I only offer that simply because I think it works best if there's no carve out here. At least that's certainly how it works best for the city's budget. That's the only thing I'd offer. I couldn't support a carve out for utility.
Councilmember, if I may, if you've got a sunset date of a year, rather than have it brought back, if that can be enacted in a year, I'd be willing to support that. I think that's fair.
To be enacted within a year? You mean?
Enacted in a year, yes, sir.
So
But
not
brought back.
to take immediate effect?
That's correct. I'd be supporting that option.
I would be okay with that as long as we roll out some information saying that is what is happening.
Very well.
I think that's a reasonable compromise.
I'll seek a motion on that, if you may.
May I clarify? So we're basically talking about option B for this first year and then transitioning to option A. Is that or using the recommended option but passing on the credit card fees a year from now, to clarify?
I think A is the option, but holding on to the credit card fees until
for utilities.
For utilities only,
Yeah.
for a year. All right. I will make that motion.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Very well. If there's no further discussion, or if there's no substitute motion, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Charles.
Aye.
Councilmember Dunlap. No. Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
No.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes 3-2.
All right. Next item is a 2023 legislative platform. We had a hiccup in our procedure, and I'll ask our city attorney to describe that hiccup to our.
Yes, let me clarify. This matter this evening, which is before you, is not a statutory or legislative action, but rather is a statement of council position and direction to staff. It is being returned this evening to afford the council the opportunity for further debate, in particular to allow Dr. Charles, now that she has read the materials and met with staff, to engage in the debate in a more robust manner. It is being returned tonight out of an abundance of caution, in that there was a misinterpretation of the Roberts Rule of Order with respect to the call question, and as such, we're recommending that it be brought back this evening. The Roberts Rules of Order are adopted as guides. They're not binding law. They're not substantive law. They are a guide, and they're subject to conflicts with state law, which controls. In this particular situation, the council has adopted as non-substantive law the Roberts Rules of Order, and as such, because of the question of debate, we have brought it back this evening to conclude that debate on these items.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilmember Charles, I know you had at the last meeting some questions and comments that you wanted to make. Please do so.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And because you arrived late, you didn't hear me comment earlier that I have had the opportunity to have extensive meetings with staff on this. They scheduled extra meetings and went the extra miles. They also provided, I would like to point out, a document that I requested, which is a detailed list of the current laws that are being considered in the California legislature, bills, I should say. They're up for consideration in the California legislature, and how our legislative platform would relate to those and give us direction on where our city might support or oppose certain things. And I have reviewed this, and I appreciate the extra attention to detail by staff on this. With this conversation that we've had, I would like to make a motion for adopting this with an amendment that we would think about the three guiding principles, but instead of having preserve local control at the top, I would like to promote fiscal stability up to the top and support funding opportunities, keeping preserving local control, but moving that to the third position so that we, as our consultants and teams are working on supporting or opposing these measures, don't think of that as our major concern. Our major concern is the fiscal stability of the city and also bringing in funding opportunities with, as well, preserving local control if possible. I would like to move to make that amendment.
I would certainly support your motion in that regard. Is there any other further discussion? Councilmember Zara.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the city attorney clarifying this issue, and I hope we don't encounter this again. But I know that I've always believed that these platforms and policies should be discussed more thoroughly than just a few minutes at a council meeting, and even when we sit with staff. These, I think, should be done through a public process and maybe a study session where we engage the public as well. There are a lot of good things in this, but there are things I agree with, and there are a lot of things that I disagree with. So, on principle, I will be abstaining on this.
All right, very well, sir. Is there public comments on this item, Madam City Clerk?
I had 3 people registered in chambers. I see no hands in Zoom. The first speaker in chambers is Todd Harrison, and after that is Wuderick.
And who is our third? Well, Mr. Harrison's coming up to the microphone.
Anjali Tapadia.
Very well. Mr. Harrison.
For the record, I'm still Todd Harrison. On a more personal note than my open comments, I felt as ignored as Dr. Charles 2 weeks ago when I spoke up about the follow-up to AB 978. I now know that follow-up is AB 1035, 1035 for the 2023-2024 session. You sit up there and try with various levels of success to handle Fullerton's housing issues and the seemingly intractable unhoused problems. That label is, as far as I can tell, the currently politically correct name for what Mr. Gamble talks about to you every session, the homeless residents of Fullerton. This bill should be strongly, actively supported by Fullerton's legislative priorities. One of the best ways to deal with the issue of missing housing is to help those facing loss of their homes to stay in them. AB 1035 extends the Rancho La Paz type anti-predatory rent increase protection to all of the state's mobile homeowners that rent the dirt under their house. I remind you that mobile homes are not actually mobile, and being priced out of your lot actually means losing your house. Besides Rancho La Paz, there are 5 more mobile home parks in Fullerton alone, and many in the surrounding communities that face the same uncertain future. Do the right thing, make this a priority, and keep more people from losing their homes and joining the ranks of Fullerton's victims of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wuderick.
Next speaker is Wuderick, and after that will be Anjali.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much once again. Let me start by this. In any legislative reforms or legislative making for it to ensure the principle of inclusivity. The participatory process of the common man is of paramount importance. It is in this regard that I say and I propose, and I don't know if you will consider it, given the fact that this is the year 2023 and you've come up with this legislative platform, I plead and I beseech, honestly from the bottom of my heart, to consider what I proposed in this council before, to set an independent police oversight body, whether you call it commission or board. The reason why I say that I've fallen in bad hand with the Fullerton police. I've never been a criminal for the rest of my years I've lived in America. The police tortured me on something which is wrong. I don't know where I will put my petition. If we have the police oversight board, I will present everything. Because they took me to the hospital in chain, where after torturing me, yesterday I left St. Jude Hospital. I have this at almost 11. I don't know what they did with my chest here. I have all the x-ray results. I don't know what they did. This is the third time I've gone to the hospital. I went on Friday and I went on yesterday. So this is why I plead with you to come up with an independent police oversight body, which is far-reaching and is very, very, very strong with high level of with credence that can address the core issues in the police department. The police is being pressed, is being babysit. The other day, I saw the police being given a certificate. Certificate to do what? We need an issue, these issues to be addressed so that the Fullerton should be a city of everybody. The police should drop and their racism tendency. When a white person calls police that a black person hears, what read in their mind is a criminal. I'm a scholar, I'm highly educated. I appreciate Madam, we linked up in LinkedIn. I'm highly educated. I studied at high level. I've never been a criminal in my life. So this is the issues. I request you, if you can adopt what the authority of the Orange County did about racism, the declaration, if you can also put input on that declaration to declare racism a public health, that will be very good. So that Fullerton should be a city like other cities. LA nowadays, there are no killings because they value the human dignity. That's what I request, that you people, before you come this to the final conclusion, please consider putting the police oversight body to deal with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our last speaker is Anjali.
Commissioner, good evening.
Hello. I hope it is all right to make my comment at this particular point in the meeting. I didn't make it to public comments earlier. I just wanted to echo some of the comments made about last council member session. I felt very confused and frustrated seeing Councilmember Charles's requests for clarification denied. And I worry that if something like that were to happen again, it would cause us as the public to lose trust in our council members and in the proceedings in this chamber. And so I hope that in the future, something like this doesn't happen again. I hope that if a council member requests additional clarification, then that request is granted. I also wished for clarification because this is a process that's new to me. The legislative platform discussions are new to me, and I would have liked to learn more about them. I appreciate that it's being brought back before council for further discussion today, and I look forward to learning as this discussion proceeds. But I just wanted to express my disappointment with the way it was handled last time, and I hope that it doesn't happen in the future. I really believe in the city of Fullerton and in its future successes, and I think that that can only come about with productive and civil discussion, primarily in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything on Zoom? Madam City Clerk. All right, we'll bring this back to council. And seek a motion or a second?
I believe it was a motion and a second, wasn't it?
Mr. Mayor, you were the second.
Actually, let me just clarify, because there were comments.
Thank you for that.
To the last, last time there was, at least I wanted to see that there was verbiage that included the city should not make it more difficult to, and so do I need to make that again, or is that already in?
No, that's included.
Oh, that's included. Okay, great.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, very well.
May
Madam
I
please.
just mention that?
Sure.
So I will mention there have been some clarifications on the staff report where that item is changed. The motion on the floor is to promote fiscal stability to first, and local control and support funding opportunities, and then local control is the priorities. And also just for public information, and because folks have been asking me about it, I did have a conversation with the city staff about the fiscal impact being none. And on a more fuller discussion on that, really what that means is that the city is not going to have to pay for this legislative platform to be implemented in a separate way. So that's why the fiscal impact is that we are not necessarily putting out money to implement this platform. However, we do anticipate hopefully getting funding if we are able to be successful in working with our state and federal partners in getting some funding. So that's why that is there. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Wise clarification. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Charles.
Aye.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Zara.
Abstain.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes
Final-
401.
Final item on our regular calendar is the partnership with Daru Korean Performing Arts and Culture to host a Korean Culture Festival in the city of Fullerton. There is a grant that has a time sensitivity to it, so I ask that the staff bring this to our council. They do need our support if they're going to seek that grant. So I will ask our city manager to make a very brief presentation with regards to this item. Sir.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, as just stated, Daru Korean Performing Arts and Culture Organization is asked to bring their event to the city of Fullerton. They are looking at the end of October for both 2023 and 24. In 2024, they have applied, or they're in the process of trying to put an application together to apply for the Endowment of the Arts grant, and that's why they're asking for us to be one of the sponsors. Their sponsorship, as they've brought it forward, is just for us to sponsor to help publicize the event and to support the event, where they can put us as a sponsor on the event. We would, as we do with other events, we would have ourselves be an indemnification for ourselves, but other than that, there's no cost, and that isn't a cost either. They want to bring those events to potentially the Muckenthaler, but at this point that hasn't been reserved yet or hasn't been solidified yet. They may have other locations, and that is what they're looking for in the end, is for us to have sponsorship so that they can continue with their application to the Endowment of the Arts.
And again, to clarify for the public, there is no fiscal impact on the city, correct?
That is correct.
All right, very well. Are there any discussions from council at this time?
I do have some questions.
Sure.
So on the fiscal impact, I'm a little, I have some concerns here. It says here that there's going to be about 10,000 participants as their estimated number. That's 10,000 people coming into Fullerton, let's say, participating with a bunch of number of cars. I don't know if that wouldn't require any participation from the city to provide security and maybe some traffic control. So that I think to say that there's no fiscal impact, I think is a little premature because we really don't know a lot of the details. I've also reached out to the Muckenthaler Center because it says in this agenda report that they are a sponsoring organization, but I received notice from the Muckenthaler that they are not because of the timing of it. The Muckenthaler is not available during that time. They are fully booked. Also, the Muckenthaler cannot accommodate that many number of people. So I think I as much as I love the idea, I think it's a great idea, but I think this requires a little bit more vetting. I'm not unfamiliar with the Endowment of the Arts and grants. I don't think that it requires a commitment from the city, But what I would recommend in lieu of that, in order to help them, is maybe a letter of intent, because that is probably a lot more in line of what grants request. So maybe a letter of intent that if this things comes to fruition, that we would be willing to work with them on some of the logistics. I'd be supportive of that, considering that there are some deadlines. I would have liked to see this more vetted and maybe come back at another time. But if there is a deadline that they're looking at, then maybe a letter of intent would be more appropriate at this time.
All right, any other comments or questions from our staff? Councilmember, please.
So I'm just wondering how large 10,000 people is in relation to things like past events like First Night, and if maybe our police representative could speak as to, is that too large of an event that would need some kind of security, or are any of those issues known at this point, basically?
If I can clarify one thing, so there's two things on that. One, as we looked at it, we think that may have been a typo, and it may be a lower number than they gave. But the other thing is it's over 4 days, and so I think they were looking at total number of participants over the 4 days, so not at one single event. Okay. So that's what it appears like. Again, they're still working through all of the event issues, and so they're trying to gather sponsors and/or letter of intents, or however we would want to do it. They're trying to gather all that information now, so they haven't fully been able to finalize all their logistics.
If I may, just a quick follow-up. I do recall also last year when we were discussing the Day of Music, which is sponsored by a local organization here. There were fees that they were asking to waive, and I remember we had a hard time getting there as a council and waiving those fees ultimately. But there are rental fees associated with using, let's say, our plaza, or utilizing public works services for, let's say, restrooms in the public and so on. So we really don't know, because at this time it doesn't seem there is an actual event yet. And I remember asking back then if we can bring back a policy, a general policy that allows us and staff to, rather than having all these groups come back to council and having to vet them one by one, maybe we can come up with some standards and policy standards, just like with the filming permits that happened several years ago, having them go through Film LA, and with here are the standards, here are the permits, here are the requirements. I think we need to do that with events as well, and public events, and that would allow also for fairness and across the board for organizations that are local, that oftentimes I've seen struggle with this council and previous councils as well, to get their event going. So, but in this particular case, again, I love the idea. I'm all for all the arts, any art project. But I just think at this point, the appropriate thing, from my experience in that realm as well, is letters of intent are the ones that really matter, more so than a commitment. At this point, I think for us to commit would be premature.
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
All right, so here's where I'm at. It sounds like a great event. I think it's something that definitely fits within our city. I think it's great to celebrate, the Korean culture. And I also think, it's interesting that this comes forward, because, I often remark that, the bureaucracy that we see in government, works against the people. And unfortunately, there are times where, people can have great ideas and great concepts and think entrepreneurially and outside of the box and put something together. But unfortunately, it's got to navigate week after week, month after month of, various city departments in order to get done. And so I think the reality is here tonight, we have an opportunity to support something, to help it get launched, and yet also provide guidance that would say, hey, look, the city's not going to incur any costs or expenses associated with this, and perhaps the city will, and then this organization or group will cover those if they choose to hold the event here in Fullerton. This is simply indicating that the city would like to do this going forward. And I absolutely think we should. I think we should have more events like this in our city. And so, there, and also I know there was a comment made about costs of potential usage of police and such. I know we had talked, I talked to Chief Dunn a couple years ago about coordinating, for special events and things like that, where there was police coverage that was necessary. And of course, where there are costs, they're able to, pass those costs on to the applicant who is holding the event. And so there's ways to do that. And so I think it's important for us tonight as a council, I think, to take a step towards supporting this. So, sure, Councilman Zara, to your point about the policy framework that might need to come forward at a later point in time, I'm supportive of that. But I think most importantly this evening, I'm also supportive of this concept moving forward. And so hopefully we can, take the necessary steps so that everyone on this dais can be comfortable with that, so as to not deter something that's still 7 months out and has plenty of time, to come together.
All right, any
If
other
I may
comments?
add on to that real quick.
Certainly.
I do want to say that I think the deadlines probably are coming up faster than we think, just because if it's a federal grant, those are difficult and very complicated. But I agree with Councilmember Dunlap that we can sponsor with a provision, and being fully supportive of this. I should say that. To me, it kind of goes without saying. This is so exciting that this group even wants to hold this in Fullerton, and we absolutely need to promote these kind of things and make this a city where groups feel like they can hold this. We are centrally located in North Orange County. I think it's really a wonderful thing, but we should make our sponsorship include the provision that we are saying that it's any costs that are incurred by the city in terms of police or anything that needs to be necessary for logistics would then be covered as part of the budget that they are going to put in front of the NEA, because I'm sure they need to provide a detailed budget for that federal grant, and they can put that in there. So I would make a motion that we approve the sponsorship with that provision in place, that in their budget to their proposal to the NEA, they include anticipated costs that the city might incur that they're going to cover.
Understood.
Yeah, and I would second that.
All right, very well. Before we vote on that, let's take public comments on this before we discuss it again. Are there any public comments on this, Madam City Clerk?
Do have one speaker registered, Wudarik.
Mr. Udar, good evening again, sir. And while the speaker is coming, are there any on Zoom?
No, there are not.
Very well.
Thank you once again. Let me start by saying this. At the signing ceremony of the Civil Rights Act 1964 on the 2nd of July, the then 36th President of the United States was called Lyndon Baines Johnson. He said these words, and permit me to quote, that this law we are signing does not restrict anyone's freedom so long as you respect others' rights. I'm speaking like that because I tend to appreciate the culture. Because if you read the Civil Rights Act, it brought in even the culture of other communities who are living in America. I support this because the Korean community and the Asian at large, they bore a very brand of hate during the COVID-19 in the year 2021 that forced the Congress to pass a special legislation called the Asian Anti-Hate Crime Act. So I support and also urge the council, not only the Korean community to do their arts and culture, and others like the Vietnamese, even other people from the broader aspect of Africa. So I stand here to support this, and it's a good cause. Korean people are very hardworking people. Even when I'm going to do my haircut, I go here at Garden Group. They do it for me. They are very good people, very dedicated. I felt so bad when they were being attacked even at their salon. People are committed to build the American economy. So in that regard, I support this culture and the performing arts of the Korean community. Thank you.
Thank you. I had asked that the staff agendize this. I suppose it could have been done by staff, but I wanted to make sure that we were transparent on this and that we had a robust discussion on this before there was movement. That said, Councilman Zara, you had something else to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Council Member Charles's. I don't know why it doesn't roll off easily. I'm tired today. Forgive me. But I just wanted to clarify. So you're asking that we actually add to the language that we would be subsidizing some of the costs. Is that what it is?
No, actually, it's the opposite. So that we tell the organization that's putting in the NEA proposal that we are signing on as a sponsor with the provision that in their budget to the NEA, they ask for money that will cover anticipated city costs so that they would be, as Council Member Dunlap pointed out, covering the if the police presence is needed, they would cover that and they would be paying us, or the rental fees for the plaza, like you mentioned, anything that they anticipate they would to have to pay for, the city would be basically held harmless for that.
I mean, let's just make it clear, what's before you simply to co-host the event. Any details with respect to economic implications would require a formal request by them before we could waive it.
That's correct. All right. Anything further?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I mean, that is what a letter, so essentially what this is a letter of intent that we're saying we intend to help them sponsor and so on, because there's really necessarily no event in particular at this point that we're trying to help them get the funding. I would have liked to go a little further, honestly, and that's why I'd like to bring this policy back, because I think there is room for us to waive certain fees, because I'd love to see this come to Fullerton. I'd love to see us help them actually succeed. The norm, from what I understand in grant writing for the arts, is letters of intent are usually the standard form. So, however, I think we're having semantic issues here. So I just want to be clear. I'm not opposed to this. I'm just trying to figure out how best to help them out. And I would like to see us down the line even look at these fees. I'm not opposed to waiving some of them. We've waived them for the Day of Music, for example. But I'd like us to create a standard so that there's a fairness, and then that people and organizations that want to come and do business here in the arts business and culture, that there's something clear and policies that are clear, so that we're not having to have these discussions and always try to figure out what are we doing, what are we talking about. As I'm understanding the context now, that we can move forward with this. But I'd like it to be, however letter form we send them, I'd like it to be open in the sense that we are sponsors, but there could be more. I'm open to having more support for this.
All right, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Charles.
Aye.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
There's 2 items we have to consider on the consent calendar. I'll ask the council member that pulled it, in items 2 and 3, to ask us questions or make his remarks accordingly. We'll deal with 2 first. 2 is the...
Thank you.
Accounts receivable, uncollected write-off.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify here a few things. This is, and just to, talk in simplified layman's terms so I can understand a little bit. We are talking here about money that we are unable to collect from people that owe us money.
That's correct.
Okay. And the total amount that we're looking at currently is $219,000 as a total of multiple sources.
That's correct.
When you say write-off, now, coming from the business world, write-off means it's a tax write-off. What does it mean in government code?
We're essentially going to be removing the receivable and offsetting the revenue that has already been recorded. So we're essentially removing these receivables from our book entirely, and that the collection effort is essentially going to be ceasing.
So basically, we are wiping out their debt.
Yes.
And we are absorbing the loss.
That's correct.
So the taxpayer will absorb this loss.
That's correct.
How long, I know these varies, but how long is, let's say, is the time frame? What is the standard of
This, my understanding from the discussion with the Assistant City Attorney is that the statute of limitations is 3 years. So the majority of these that we're looking at to be written off are over 3 years old. So the collection efforts have been exhausted, and there's minimal likelihood of collection at this point on.
Do we have a list of these, I don't know, entities that are?
For the majority of them, we do. We do have the names of the individuals or entities that have been billed, but there are some of them that go back to the system's prior upgrade back in 2009, for which we do not have any customer data. So part of this process is a cleanup effort in advance of moving on to the Tyler General Accounts Receivable and General Billing platform, so we don't bring over outstanding balances that are truly uncollectible.
Right. Now, there's also part of this is also giving the city manager an approval to write off any uncollectible amounts under $50,000.
That's correct. That's in line with the city's current policy adopted by City Council in terms of settlement authority for claims against the city.
So that would be, that's where this number comes from.
That's correct, yes.
The standard.
Mm-hmm. And the larger dollar amounts for some of these outstanding receivables actually relate specifically to property damage. So these are individuals who or entities that have caused property damage to the city, and some of those are a little bit of a higher dollar amount, which is why we had deemed it appropriate to mirror the settlement authority dollar limit that is currently afforded to the city manager. Sorry, city manager.
Yes, and if I could just add a couple things, because you started off with Councilmember Zara on the tax write-off, and so I always look at basically for the city is the auditor's question, if we don't believe we can collect it any longer, like if it's over 3 years, then the auditors say it shouldn't be shown as a receivable because it shows as an asset on our books, and so they're saying it's a false asset, and so that's the reason we have to have a write-off policy. I'm fine with. If the council wants us to bring all uncollectibles to the council, I'm fine with that. We were just trying to make it a simple policy, but we're open to either reducing the 50,000 or keeping it at 50,000. But I just wanted to make you aware. The reason we have to do the write-off of uncollectibles is because it's shown as an asset on our books, and if we don't believe we can actually collect it, we have to write it off. So that's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer, because this is not our money, this is taxpayer money, and I prefer if there's some form of transparency on what we are writing off, basically. And so I'd like to see this come to council with the details and with maybe who is being written off, who's.
Yeah, in the agenda report, we do outline that if city council approves this, then we will work with the city manager to thoroughly review all the individual accounts that we're looking to be written off, and then bring back an agenda item to update the city council.
Right, so this would be brought back quarterly?
It'll be probably brought back at least annually. The reality is we're doing a large cleanup effort right now, so if we're able to grant city manager this level of authorization, staff will work with city manager to review all these accounts. We will do an update, most likely as a receive and file, to city council within the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer this to be quarterly also. I think 50,000 is a large number.
We're happy to bring
for financial.
If I can just clarify, we typically only write off once a year, so we don't write off.
Anyway. All right, fair enough then, if that's the case. But I think I'm a little uncomfortable with the 50,000 number, and I would be more comfortable with a lower threshold for that particular purpose. But as long as there's a public report, I guess in this case annually, I'd be okay with that.
I'm okay with the threshold, and I think, again, there's reporting, it's documented, it's a debt collection and write-off procedure that's, pretty boring, mundane, and standard, I think, for most businesses or industries. Public agency is no different here, so I'd move the item.
Councilman Dunlap, are you okay with, you said, with the 50,000 threshold?
That's correct. I mean, we're talking with respect to the city's what, a $223 million budget, $50,000 relatively I think small overall amount. It's already under the city manager's threshold for some other items, so I'm okay with that amount, yes.
And to clarify, Director Chang, for the public, this is while it's real money, this is the public's dollar that Councilman Zara mentioned. It is a necessary budgetary procedure, correct?
It's more necessary from the financial reporting perspective because it really is something that we're not going to be able to collect.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions that we may have?
I
Mr.
agree
Mayor
with
Pro Tem.
Councilmember Dunlap, because obviously the motivation for both city manager and staff is to collect everything that would be collectible. So I don't really fear any misuse of this necessarily. I do think an annual recap would be helpful.
That's the staff's intent.
All right. Are there
I'll second Councilmember Dunlap's motion because I believe it needs a second before we can do anything else
Very well.
procedurally.
Thank you. Are there any public comments, Madam City Clerk?
We do have a hand raised now on Zoom. Jane Reifer, you can unmute.
Yes, I apologize. I was.
Ms. Milton, come on up. Ms. Reifer, can you speak up a little bit? We can't hear you, if you don't mind.
So sorry. Yes, I'll try and speak up. Thank you. I was just wondering, has a total of the amounts that are uncollectible been stated tonight? I missed that if it was. Because it's the first time and it's a cleanup, I imagine it might be as high as a couple million. I mean, it could be high if it hasn't been done in decades.
We're looking at probably upwards of 220,000 on the high end.
Okay, so it is relatively lower.
Kind of
Thank you.
varies. I think some of them go back to, I think, as early as 2010, 2009 timeframe, and some of them are more recent. But we're looking at everything over 3 years old, or if they're more shorter duration than that, that we've really fully vetted and worked with the departments to assess collectability.
Very
So
well.
that's $220,000 over 14 years. Okay.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Reifer, please continue with your comment.
No,
now
that was
your
my
question's
question,
been
and I
answered.
appreciate knowing the relative level of the uncollectible money. Thank you.
Understood. Ms. Milton, good evening.
Good evening again, Council. Can everyone hear me okay? I was just curious, what policies and procedures does the city do to try and get the money before they write it off? Is there a policy that goes that you go to, not judgment recovery, but something like that to try and get at least part of the money back rather than writing the whole thing off? Is there a policy that the city does that, or is it just straight write-off? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have that question answered. Director Chang, can you be kind enough as to answer that for Ms. Milton?
So depending on the types of receivables, the departments have been working with our fiscal services team to evaluate all the items that we've essentially listed for initial review with the city manager for write-off. Where we do have recourse, the departments actually work with fiscal services to send additional delinquency notices and also contact the individual or entity directly to try to collect those fees. In terms of where we have lease agreements and there's delinquent rents, we obviously have recourse, so none of those are on the list. So all of the ones that we're proposing to be reviewed with the city manager have been fully vetted by the departments and are still undergoing some vetting. I believe there's 2 or 3 departments that we're still waiting to hear back confirmation from that they fully reviewed those. And then the city eventually will be looking at also probably doing an RFQ for a collection agency or 2, so we can pass these on to them. But the city's recommendation is when we do pass it on to collections, we write it off because the amount, the ability to collect when it goes to collections is somewhat minimal, and then the fees the collection agency does collect, very little money comes back to the city, city manager.
So to clarify, so once they're written off, they could go to collections. They'll just come in as straight revenue. They won't come in as a payoff of a receivable.
Understood. All right. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Charles.
Aye.
Councilmember Dunlap. Councilmember Zara.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes 4-1.
And then the item number 3, the annual housing element progress report for 2022 was also pulled by the Councilman Zara. Councilman?
Yeah, I don't have questions, but I thought this was worthy enough for the public to hear about where we are on our housing, especially on numbers. There's only a couple of quick questions and clarifications I have on the tables, Table 1 and Table 2 in the agenda report. And I'd love to hear a simple presentation, obviously, for the public. But my questions here are, Table 1, it says Orange Thorpe Avenue, the street lights mixed use, 310 above moderate. I thought this was a market rate. I don't know if we can clarify whether this is moderate rate or market rate. And then also in Table 2, the summary of housing production permits issued, there's no line item on market rate. So does that mean that we never issued any market rate permits, or is that missing there something? So those are the two questions I have, but I'd love for the public to understand a little bit about where we are. I'd love a little progress report from you. Thank you.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Schaefer, Planning Manager. So to answer your questions, we generally consider above moderate and market rate the same thing. So there's, I guess, the semantics. And then regarding the breakout on Table 2, are you speaking of year 2021, or I'm not sure your question on that?
There's no line item says market rate. It just says very low, low, moderate, above moderate.
Oh yes, sir. So I understand. So these are the RENA affordability rates that we have to report on. There's no reporting for market rate. It's either above moderate, low or very low, and those are the reporting requirements that the state has set. So.
Just a quick follow-up. Then in Table 1, then why do we have, if it's all semantics, then why is there market rate and then above moderate? Like why are these two? Because I see some of them are listed as market rate.
Yes, sir. Correct.
So I'm just a little confused about
we
that.
can clean that up next time. So when we work with the developers, we gather the information from them. They tell us what they plan to do with their units. Either, if they tell us market rate, then we just jot that down. But in the future, we could do that to make it consistent.
Yeah, I appreciate it because it could be perceived as, when you're talking market rate, obviously your mind goes somewhere, and then when you're talking above moderate, your mind's somewhere else.
Yes,
right?
sir.
There is a very big difference. But if we're classifying them as the same, then I think we need to be consistent and we need to be accurate in the portrayal for the community.
Sure.
Understanding. Yeah.
All right. Anything further, sir?
No, but if you don't mind, if I can get a little briefing for the community on this item. Thanks.
Absolutely. So the report that you reviewed today is an annual report that's required that each jurisdiction in the state of California submit to both the Housing and Community Development Department and the Office of Planning and Research. This is required, and it's due on April 1st of every year. Some cities have not been submitting their APRs. The report's called the APR, and they are at risk of not receiving state funding. Regarding the housing element update, which is related, we have two consultants actively working on the products. So we have the Rincon consultants that are working on the corrections from the first draft of the housing element. There's 11 pages of corrections from Housing and Community Development that they're actively working on to make those corrections, and they've provided a list of items that staff is working on to fill in those data needs. And then we have our second consultant, which is DUDEC. They are working on the Housing Incentive Overlay Zone, the HIOZ, which was presented to the council back in October of last year and was presented to the Planning Commission as a study session item last month. Our next highlights that we're working on is we are planning a community meeting for the HIOZ, and we're going to invite the property owners of those properties that have been identified for HIOZ overlay, which would be early April. And after that, we'll be developing development standards that will be brought to the Planning Commission for vetting and into the City Council for approval. And there's going to be an environmental impact report that's required that would also be presented for review and approval. Unless there's any other questions, this concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions, Councilman Bizarro? Anything?
So just to clarify, we our allocation is 13,209. That's our RENA numbers. That we need to issue permits for. Is that what it is? So we need to have 13,209 permits issued within the next 8 years.
So when we sorry, I'm tongue-tied today. When we prepare the APR, we're reporting the permits issued for units. We have several hundred units in plan check right now. Unfortunately, because the permits have not been issued, we can't count those units. So they'll be on the next APR for 2023.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you. Appreciate your time and
seek a motion to move this along.
Mr. Mayor, I just have one more clarification question.
Sure,
Actually
of
relates
course.
to
Council
what you
member,
just
please.
mentioned there.
Please.
So I thought I heard you say earlier, though, that the ones that are listed as market rate don't count under the RENA allocation, or they do?
They do count. They'll be considered above moderate level.
Okay, so they'll just be put into the above moderate.
Correct.
Okay, and I just want to say I appreciate that Councilman Zara pulled this so that we could have this discussion. Housing is absolutely the number one concern that I hear from people who do not currently own their own homes, which is quite a few of my constituents, certainly quite a few of my students, right? I mean, so I appreciate you doing this, and I just wanted to kind of point out for the public record that even if all the things in here are approved and go through, we are still looking at over 10,000 more permits that we need to do. So if maybe we could encourage more ADUs to get permitted, that's not going to reach the 10,000. I mean, I've heard from some long-term residents that they really want Fullerton to just kind of not build any further or not do that. And unfortunately, it's just not a possibility with the reality. And I just wanted to point that out so that as this council considers many, many, many thousands more housing projects in the future, as the Planning Commission and as your department is going to be incredibly busy, and thank you so much to our new community director for all her hard work, that we are just going to have to figure out how to do this in a way that builds the city that we want to live in, but we're going to have to build it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move the item.
Very well. Is there a second? We'll take public comments. Madam City Clerk, any public comments on this
We have
issue?
2 hands raised in Zoom. Elizabeth Hansberg, you should be able to talk.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this issue. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the 1600 West Commonwealth property, which is the city's property, is going to be built at the 80 to 120 moderate income level. This is really distressing because one of the biggest ways to get deeper levels of affordability at the low and very low income level is to build on city-owned sites. So the fact that this is coming in at 80 to 120 area median income, which is roughly $84,000 to maybe $109,000 for a family of 4, the fact that that's coming in at that level of affordability, which is really the same level that regular market rate unsubsidized apartments are marketed to that same income bracket. This is really a challenging situation because we have a lot of very low income units that are required in our RENA. And this site is one of our best opportunities. And we're just going to give it away to the 80 to 120. If this was a private project, my comments would be so different. But the fact that this is public land and we're not using it for the deepest level of affordability possible, that's a missed opportunity. That's a huge, huge missed opportunity. Where else are we going to get the opportunity to subsidize the cost of development so that we can have those lower rents for people that are making $30,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, right? That are under the 80% area median income, people making 60% of the area median income and less. So I would really encourage you to have a conversation with Meta Housing. I'm surprised that this got this far because this is really distressing.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Jane Rifer, you should be able to unmute.
Good
Yes,
evening, Ms.
thank you
Rifer.
for the opportunity to speak again. This will be one of the few times that you will hear me agreeing with Elizabeth Hansberg. And absolutely, on public land, we should be trying to address the most affordable levels of housing, and it is a missed opportunity at the 1600 West Commonwealth. I have to expand that and say I believe it's also was a missed opportunity where the hotel and the housing project is going in, and then any future developments there at the transportation center. Same thing with the Ambridge Court area, formerly Ambridge Court area, and so forth. We really, if it's public land, this is where we can get our lowest levels of affordability. Also, I'd like to say that the Harbor and Orangethorpe gateway area to the city is one of the areas that can likely be able to accommodate a significant number of new houses that would not impact existing neighborhoods. And just lastly, I'd like to ask, will the meeting for the Hayas property owners be noticed to the public so that the public may attend?
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one comment actually, because
Please.
it's my understanding that we're going to get an update on the 1600 Commonwealth site, because that is different than what was originally proposed, several years ago when it came forward. If I understand correctly, Orange County was frozen out of the tax credit process, which one of the callers alluded to, the city being able to contribute city-owned property as a way to kind of subsidize and make housing more affordable. But another way to do that is via state and federal tax credits, and it's my understanding that during the tax credit cycle that took place earlier this year, Orange County was really frozen out of that process, and as a result, the developer, although they submitted a proposal to help offset the cost of constructing this project, they were not awarded those, and so I assume we're going to get a little bit more of an update there, but. That was my understanding, because certainly the income levels that were included in the proposal tonight are not what were originally proposed,
Right.
During the RFP process.
Good evening, Council. So 1600 Commonwealth is a city-owned property, and we had put it out for an RFP and selected a candidate to be able to develop on that site. Where it is in the process is they're going through the Planning Commission entitlement process in terms of programming, design, and all of those components, in addition to infrastructure improvements, all of that. So a lot of the programming for that, you kind of have to analyze that on a pro forma basis for the development. And so they've come up with this breakdown, which hasn't come up before you yet because it needs to go through the Public Planning Commission. Then you'll see it as part of the Affordable Housing and Disposition Agreement. So that's where you have a little bit more information as to what that breakdown is, why they chose that breakdown, and the sort of overall contributions that they're making towards that project.
If I may, it is not, now that I'm noticing this, and I'm glad Ms. Hansberg pointed this out, this was not supposed to be moderate. I mean, when we approved this and the E&A and moved this forward, this was supposed to be considered low income. And so, and for us not to be updated on this, I think, and for that process, and however it happened with Meta, whether tax credits frozen out or whatever that is, we should have been informed of this drastic change, because this is public land and we need to give it that we are subsidizing this. But now, I mean, this is going to be
it's essentially a bait and switch, really. If the council makes a decision based on an RFP grid that was presented, and then all of a sudden, a year later, there's something entirely different comes forward, I can expect some things to change, but they did make me aware of the fact that they submitted a proposal to for I don't know if it's a 4% or 9% tax credits but that Orange County was entirely frozen out of those. They didn't get those for the project, and so I don't know if that has, I don't know if that had anything to do with this, but I did see that we're expecting an update. So hopefully, when we get an update, we can get some facts and understand this in more detail than just the generalities that have been outlined, because that's really not helpful.
Yeah, a lot of it also has to do with the entitlements in terms of what they're approved. So it's very advantageous when you do apply for those grants. I know that's the cycle that they're trying to reach, which comes up, I believe, this spring, if not early summer. So that is one of the goals that they're trying to accomplish. But quite frankly, that breakdown, I don't have it in front of me, which was at the Planning Commission meeting. That was the first time that they, kind of put it forward. But that can still get fine-tuned when they come before the City Council. So it's not necessarily finalized. We can certainly have that conversation with them.
But
And I will clarify on the specifics of the disposition.
RFP.
Yeah,
Well,
the
yeah, 'cause I
RFP.
mean, again, that totally.
Because I thought
defeats
it
the
was
purpose.
broader, so
Yeah.
I will double check.
Yeah, no,
and
it was very
provide a report.
specific. It was, I mean, we went through this process really at length because I think staff initially bungled the process, and there was a wide range of discrepancies between some of the proposals that were, between the, gosh, they didn't even have proposals initially. It was like a 1 or 2 page summary of what a potential project might be, and so, I actually thought that process went well and worked well, but to find this out is concerning.
Sure. I'll come back to the council with an update in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How does this affect, we are now sending this out to the state as our report. Have we reported on this prior? I mean, does the reporting the income levels here, does that matter as far as having a little discrepancy between the previous report that I'm not sure, I don't remember what it was, under what level it was, but now it's moderate. Does that make a difference in the reporting?
Are we still talking 1600 West Commonwealth?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, this report does count for the breakdown in the arena. So we do have to add, accurately depict each project with the breakdown of each affordability level.
What I'm saying is that 1600, the last report that was sent out, was it sent out in the last report?
It was not sent out,
Okay,
no.
so this is the first time this is reported to the state?
It's not being reported to the state. It's being reported as a potential project, but it will not. It'll be included. The actual report is that spreadsheet, that multi-page spreadsheet. That's what the arena gets counted against. And so when they pull permits, then we'll be reporting that project. So they're not even there yet. It's going to be a year or two away.
Okay, so there's no discrepancy, because I don't want us to be reporting something and then.
As I recall, the reporting is based upon permit issuances. So if a permit's not been issued, then you wouldn't be reporting it.
That's correct. Yeah, we're bringing up these projects as an FYI for future.
Yeah, but I agree with Councilmember Dunlap about, this was a very long process, and we went through several steps to get to these points. And I remember when we approved it, there was very specific numbers of units, and each one, with the breakdown of each one. So for them to change without notifying us, I think is a little worrying.
Yes, sir. Like Sue said, it'll be coming to you in the future.
All right, very well. Anything further? Obviously, that the meta housing project's coming back. This is just an update on the housing element. Are you okay to move forward, Council Member?
Yes, we have a motion.
We do.
All right, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Charles.
Aye.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
All right. Next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, March 21st. I haven't seen home in over a week. I've been on legislative trips back to back, but I felt this was important. I know that the Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker gave a lovely remembrance of the former mayor, but we do adjourn this meeting at his request in the memory of Mayor F. Richard Jones. Born in Indiana during the Depression, Mayor Jones lived a life of great substance. I'm told he began working and paying into Social Security at age 11. Incredible. He was an honor student in high school, attended the University of Texas, followed by medical school. Mayor Jones was commissioned as an officer in the United States Air Force, where he served his country, selected as the Air Force Flight Surgeon of the Year. transferred to Travis Air Force Base, where he headed plastic surgery services. During this time, he operated on countless Vietnam casualties and ex-POWs. Mayor Jones served as a Rotarian, a member of the American Legion, president of the Fullerton Chamber of Commerce. We all die. The goal shouldn't be to live forever, but perhaps the measure should be creating something positive that does. And Mayor Jones was a member of City Council during the city's most modern change to date. We mourn his passing, wish his family and friends strength and sadness as we grieve as a community for our collective loss. Good night, everyone.